This is TLV1.
The Tel Aviv Review with Gilad Halpern.
Hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review, a program dedicated to the word, to the thought and to debate, where I, Gilad Halpern, engage in close encounters of the intellectual kind. Every week I talk to writers, scholars, thinkers, documentary filmmakers and other people who have done something to make our life a tad more interesting. I am now delighted to be joined here in the studio by a political scientist, Dr. Nurit Hashimshony-Yaffe of the School of Government and Society at the Tel Aviv-Yaffo Academic College, who's here to talk about her most recent study that's currently underway, and it pertains to Israel's efforts to curb trafficking of women that proved to be rather successful. I mean, the efforts, not the trafficking. Well, both actually, but the efforts proved to be rather successful. Hello, Nurit, and thank you for coming.
Hi.
So, over a period of about a decade and a half, Israel has all but eliminated a phenomenon that used to be rather widespread, and that is women who migrated to Israel and were forced to work in the local sex industry and were often subjected to coercion and abuse. We can talk about a few thousands of women over the years. That used to be also in the news quite a lot, and it was something, one of the many problems of this country. And in this period of just under 15 years, thanks to concerted efforts of the government, and we're going to get to that, there's been a complete sea change. Just what would like to quote a report that was issued by the United States Department of State in July 2001 that said that the government of Israel does not meet the minimum standards for combating trafficking in persons and has not yet made a significant effort to combat the problem. Fast forward 13 years, in 2014, the same report, a similar report, says that the government of Israel now fully complies with the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking. That's quite extraordinary. How do we explain this sea change? It can't be just down to goodwill, can it?
No, it's not just a goodwill, but it's also a goodwill. It's a combination of few local and international actors. It's very important to note the United States' role in this process, but also two others. One is the Israeli NGOs, and the other is government actions, both government and parliament.
Right. So before we get to the U.S. role, which I find rather interesting because, it didn't have to play a role in it because the women came from underprivileged countries in the former Soviet Union and other places in Eastern Europe and Asia, and they were trafficked to Israel. And on the face of it, the United States had no role in it. But let's put it aside for a second and talk about the two other actors. You were saying the civil society here in Israel and lawmakers or government branches. So is this some sort of proof of how successful this teaming up between those two sectors in society could be?
I think so. That's actually the reason why I came into it, because I was interested in civil society organizations and the way they work, and a few kinds of coalitions. And one of the coalitions I was researching was the coalition to fight human trafficking, especially women trafficking. And I think it's a good example of the cooperation between civil society and the public sector.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's give us a lowdown of the process. So this, and like I said in the introduction, this was a major issue in the public debate here in Israel, and human rights organizations were campaigning for some sort of government action against it. And what did this campaign consist of in the beginning?
the beginning was a few Israeli NGOs, civil society organizations.
We're talking about the 1990s here, right?
Yes, at the end, yes. Like 15 years ago, who were collecting data. And actually, Amnesty and the Israeli Women Network were most of the time collecting data about women trafficking. And then almost at the same time, there was the U.S. statement about Israel that you just
Department
cited.
Of State,
yes, yes. And then the two things actually converged into a parliament decision to establish a parliamentary committee that will deal with the issue. And then it was followed, like a few years later, it was followed by an intergovernmental committee of people from Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Interior, the police, and they were all working together. And this is how it...
But one thing that we know here in Israel, and I might be a bit too cynical saying that, is that one way to avoid dealing with the subject is to form a committee, and that's how you never hear of it again. Yeah. So what happened here? How did this prove so successful?
First of all, you're right. And that's why it's so interesting, because whenever we heard about the committee, we said, okay, so nothing will happen. And here something did happen, and it is a success story, as I want to call it. It's success of the policy design and both of policy implementation, which were both a part of the committee's work. The committee in the parliament and the intergovernmental committee.
So where did this committee succeed when so many others failed? What did it do? What did it require for it to succeed?
I would like to say that mainly two things. One was a pressure, bottom to top pressure from the civil society organizations. They didn't stop pressing. They collect all the data. They did great work. They joined the committees. They were all sitting around the same round table while the decision process was taking place. And I cannot underestimate the role of international...
But you can say that about so many other things, from the poverty rates in Israel to the occupation of the Palestinian territories to the treatment of African asylum seekers now in Israel. And still, it doesn't seem to be going in what I would call a positive direction.
Yeah, if I will compare it to the problem of asylum seekers in Israel, which I think it's a good example or a good case to compare to, because they are both, in both cases, it's we're talking about strangers, people who are coming from outside, who are illegal migrants, who are staying here against the law.
Who have no legal status in Israel.
Yes, so it's a good a case to be compared to. I think that in the case of human trafficking, we're talking about women. We're talking about women who came mostly from East European countries. Most of them, I can say all of them, were part of sex industry in Israel. And there was a consensus that it's something that should be eliminated. So I think that's one reason why it pushed through a success and not to failure.
There was a consensus that this is wrong and should be. There was not only a consensus, like a value judgment on the issue of saying this is wrong and should be handled, but also on how it should be handled.
Yes, the question of how was very easy to answer, because the State Department gave very accurate criteria of what should be done in the states outside of the United States. And there was also an incentive.
What are they?
The criteria are, it's a very long list, but the idea was that they have the criteria and they have an incentive for all those countries who are supported security support or any other support from the United States. There was even more details they should follow. And I think the incentive was very strong, and the government of Israel knew that it's not possible not to follow.
What was the incentive?
Money.
So they actually, so
The
America
incentive was money.
actually paid Israel money to curb this phenomenon.
Yes, but even more important, the U.S. policy statement was that countries that will not follow the criteria will not get any further support in the future.
Okay.
This is something that the State of Israel cannot afford.
Well, we're talking about the defense assistance and all that. So they basically said, the United States government basically said that if Israel doesn't follow meet the criteria set out by them to curb the trafficking of women, they will not get 1 single cent from them.
Yeah, they didn't say it in this way. They said, I can cite it, they said, United States will not to provide non-humanitarian, non-trade related foreign assistance to any government that will not.
Right. Okay. So this is why you said that the United States government played a crucial role in this. How interesting. Okay. So how did this come about in practice? What did the Israeli government actually do to prevent this from going on? Because these women were smuggled into Israel. They never came as, I don't know, first of all, out of their own will, or very rarely. And it was very shady all along. So what measures did they actually take in order to combat trafficking?
I would say that it's not just that they were smuggled into Israel, they were forced. I mean, it's what we call a forced migration. Yeah. Maybe they migrate because they want better lives, but they didn't. Most of them didn't realize that what they're going to do is to be part of the sex industry and to be forced to work with any basic human rights. Yeah. So what the State of Israel did was actually the first steps were mapping and learning the situation. It was backed by information from many other countries around the world, because we're talking about a worldwide phenomena. It's not just in Israel. And then they moved into a few steps, a few decisions. Some of them were legislation, minor and even major legislation, but this was the first step. Then they move
criminalizing it. Is that it? What do you mean by legislation?
Yes. And there was a debate. What's best to do? To have any minor or all minor changes in the existing law, or have new laws? But at the end, they changed few laws that they will be able to bring people to court. Yeah. And then not
the women themselves, I'm assuming, but the
and
people
that was
who
a change, because until the beginning of the 14 or 15 years ago, women who were smuggled into Israel or were trafficked actually were not looked as victims. They were looked as illegal infiltrators, and they were looked as prostitutes, and no one looked at them as victims.
And could be charged.
So the change was to look at the women as victims, also to take care of the traders or the smugglers.
Yeah.
Most of the traders, not the smugglers, are mostly outside of Israel, but the traders inside of Israel. The police had quite an important role in this. And also to have shelters for women.
Right.
That will protect them while they're staying here until...
And what happened to them afterwards? Like they were taken out of those... brothels into shelters, were subjected to some sort of rehabilitation process, and then sent back to their countries?
Yes, but the rehabilitation process includes support by the government while they giving the evidence in court, and also kind of financial and psychological support. So,
was this did this usher a clampdown on the sex industry in Israel altogether, or were these foreign workers just substituted by Israeli ones and everything just remained the same?
It's difficult to answer, I think. I think in this case, we're talking only about migrant workers or a specific case of migrant workers, of forced migration of women.
Mm-hmm.
But
So this, at least from this aspect, it has been addressed and tackled. You said earlier that some of the the big machers in this industry aren't in Israel at all. And when it comes to trafficking and migration and all that, it has to be an international effort or a multinational effort. So I'm assuming that looking at domestic legislation, as important as it may be, is just part of the picture.
Yes, it is an international effort, and I mentioned the State Department, but it's also worth mentioning the UN with a convention that Israel was assigned to, and many other countries as well. And the whole idea was to eliminate or combat the human trafficking around the world.
Right.
In Israel, we were talking about a few thousand people or a few thousand women a year, but we were talking about 2.5 million people in the world, so it's a huge problem.
So other, the global industry, if we can call it, of
it is a global
trafficking.
industry.
Yeah. So is it all going in the same direction? And Israel is just just riding on this wave.
It's one path. Israel is one path, and it used to be easy to enter illegally into Israel through Egypt.
Yeah.
Since the border was closed, it's much more difficult.
Yeah, and we know that because of the asylum seekers from Africa. This is really striking, and it can do also a lot of good press for Israel, whose track record on human rights isn't always spotless. Let's put it this way. Why do you think it doesn't get the attention it deserves in the media, both in Israel and abroad?
I'm not sure it doesn't get the attention. I think in some circles there is. It's very known that it was a success.
But you have to admit that if you take the asylum seekers, the African asylum seekers, which you said is a good parallel case, and compare it to the media attention that trafficking of women get, you can't really compare the two.
One of the reasons I got into it was because I did a research of 2 years about asylum seekers in Israel, and I was really very frustrated because nothing is working, and the state of Israel is doing all kinds of efforts to make their lives hard in Israel. Although the state of Israel was assigned to the UN Human Rights Convention.
Yeah, but that's deliberate. They want to encourage them to leave. It's not out of... you can say that it's malicious, but it's one way to get them to leave too.
Yes, but the current situation is that we have between 40,000 to 50,000 asylum seekers in Israel. There aren't any asylum seekers getting into Israel anymore because the border was sealed. Yeah. So we have to do something with the people who are staying here, which are mostly Sudanese and Eritreans that actually cannot go back to their countries of origin. But I must say that I have the feeling that one of the things that are different between the two cases is that, and I'm sorry to say it, but when we talk about asylum seekers, we're talking about black African people. And when we talk about human trafficking or women trafficking, we talk about white women from East Europe. So I think maybe it's not admitted in this way, but the world, not just in Israel, is not acting in the same way or with the same standards.
You're saying that black men are being perceived as more of a danger than white women. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm sorry to say it. I don't like it, but I think that's what happens.
Well, on this optimist note, we'll have to wrap up. Dr. Nurit Hashimshony-Yaffe of the School of Government and Society at the Tel Aviv-Yaffo Academic College. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.